Yes, good morning everyone. My name is Andler. I'm from a company called Fun Academy, and I will begin with a question, and I will also end with questions, more questions than this one. So usually, it's kind of funny because usually in presentations I at least have the assumption that I need to have answers for the audience and so forth, but I don't really have many answers today, but more questions. So let's hope that the group discussions in the teamworks will provide some insight into how we could find answers as well. Well, in Fun Academy we always begin with the question of what if learning was fun? And when we talk about learning, we are actually talking about children. So also from the Mydata perspective, that perhaps provides a point of view which is not that usual when we are talking about the data that concerns children up from the age of 3 and up to the age of 16 in our case. So Fun Academy is actually a company that was founded as a spin-off from Rovio Entertainment in the end of last year. So the founders were working at Rovio in Rovio Learning, and that had been going on for quite a number of years already. But then the decision was made that it's better to have it as a separate company, and that was how Fun Academy was founded. So as the name says, what we try to do is to make learning fun and let kids have fun while they are learning, because the results will be better that way. And when we say learning is fun, we don't just mean playing games, but we actually look at the process of learning and how actually it can be fun. So things like if you love what you do when you are learning, you learn better, it's fun. You can choose how you learn. Different kids learn in different ways. You feel safe, it becomes a healthy addiction. So yes, we even talk about addictions, even if it's a bad word. Usually in games, many people are worried about addiction. But enjoying learning can become an addiction, which is a healthy addiction. And also it's fun to fail. That's something that we think is quite important, because the current culture, both in companies and many other organizations, is that it's not okay to fail, and it's a big shame to fail. But we think it's a part of the learning process to fail, and it's really important that we make learning fun through making it also fun to fail. Now the strange thing is that in our world today everything has been digitalized. I mean, look at the life around us, pretty much everything is digitalized except one thing. Schools are still pretty much the same as they have been for ages. Now for us it's clear that this will change, and it will change fast. So schools will become digitalized, and digital learning and digital content will be more and more in the process of learning for our kids. Now when we say digitalization of learning, we don't mean technology. Technology is irrelevant in our opinion. It's really about content. It's about creating content that can make the process of learning more fun and more effective for the kids. We also think teachers are really in the center of this revolution. We need to have the teachers drive this process, otherwise it won't happen in any meaningful way. And also digital learning, it needs to be fun. All learning needs to be fun, again, because it's more effective that way. So let's talk about fun a bit then. Let's talk about games as well. Now our background is with these characters, and the thing is that in the entertainment industry, I mean as an industry, those people have learned a couple of things how to engage people. So things like game mechanics, things like creating characters that you can relate to, using emotional hooks to engage people, making it very easy for people to get involved with the content, immediate gratification. You don't need to wait for getting gratified with something, but you can get it immediately. And of course quality and polish in production. I mean, these are the ways that the entertainment industry is using in games like Angry Birds and other games. And this is also what education is competing with. I mean, kids are faced with this kind of stuff in entertainment all the time, from all channels, constantly. But we can't have our kids just play games and be entertained. We have to make sure that they learn something. So what we decided to do is to use these same mechanisms for learning, for real learning content. So what we are doing is basically a platform for learning. We won't go into details of this, but just to kind of get into today's topic as well, the data part of learning. We have services for teachers, and we are creating a service for the kids themselves, a platform where they can use fun learning content. And all that is based on a platform which has a database, of course, at its center. And that database will have a lot of data that is from the kids, about the kids. So obviously we begin to get these questions then in our minds about, okay, we have a lot of data about the kids and how they use the learning content in the platform and the platform itself. It will be very detailed data about how the kids are using these things. And the reason this data is needed is that we will need analytics, because one of the great opportunities in digital learning and digital content is that we can actually adapt the learning process based on the progress of the kid. Not have the same thing for everyone in the same way, but actually have it personalized and adapted to how the kid learns and how the kid likes to learn. So what kind of learning data are we talking about? I mean, we are not in this context now talking about grades and course results, kind of the official data that you think about in schools. We are not talking about data that necessarily is human readable. It's not like, things like what grade did Ville get for his mathematics course last spring. Instead, what we are talking about is usage of learning modules, learning content modules, how much those content modules have been used by the kid. Things like self-evaluation, that will be one of the mechanisms that can be used quite effectively to have the kids actually evaluate themselves the learning process and the learning content that they have been using. We will also have social interaction data. So this will happen in the class context, in the school class context. It will be student-to-teacher communication and also student-to-student communication. And then of course the progression data itself about the modules and the levels within the modules. Really detailed data about how the kids have been using that fantastic learning content that we will have in the future. So this progression data and this goal of being able to adapt the learning path is really what we try to get to. So kind of what module is next? So now I've been using module A, what should I do next to have a really nice progression in my personal learning path? So the questions we need to look at in the system, in the platform that we are creating, is that what are the previous levels and the modules that the kid has been using? How much grinding has the kid been using on those levels? So does it seem difficult for the kid to use module X, or was it really easy for the kid to use module X? I mean, we know in games that kids and actually adults as well, they can actually spend significant time on grinding levels. Just using the same level all over again for a lot of times. And this can be quite valuable data when we think about how to progress that kid in the learning path. Also success grade on the levels, so how well has the kid succeeded in the levels that we have in that learning game or learning content. And then things like what has helped others, so if other kids have already been in the same type of situation, what has really been useful for other kids in that situation. So these are the kinds of questions, these are the kinds of objectives that we have with the usage of this learning data that we are collecting on those kids. So then obviously we get to the questions, so kind of these questions that I don't have answers to. So who should use this learning data that our platform, as an example, will be collecting? I mean, the platform itself obviously will need to use that data. And again, it's not about some human being looking at the data, but it's about the platform using that data to optimize the kid's learning path. What about the kid, him or herself? Or, okay, it's not relevant to talk about a 3-year-old and how the 3-year-old is going to use the learning data in the platform, but what about the future self? When you are grown up after 10 years, maybe that data is useful to yourself. Teachers, the school, maybe they need to use that data in some way, and the parents might be quite interested in the data as well. And then we get to the more controversial things like advertisers. Now, our platform is not going to have advertising, so it's kind of a not very relevant question for us. But in general, of course, things like kids' learning data, is that something that we want to have advertisers get access to? Probably not. Employers, future employers, authorities, I don't know. Might be easy answers, but maybe good to think about this a bit. And who should decide this thing? I mean, who makes the decision about that small kid's learning data? And what purpose should this learning data be used for? Now, we think it's clear that it's needed for this progression of the learning path. That's really the main use that we are looking at when we are designing our platform. But things like scoring and evaluation, scoring the kid, kind of evaluating how well the kid is doing in school and in learning, ranking children, I mean, that's enormously important in many countries. They really think that ranking kids is one of the most important objectives of learning. We don't agree, but nevertheless, most of the world is like that. Advertising, again, I mean, there are many potential uses that this data could be used for, but we need to kind of think about the objectives here and who and what purpose we can really have for this data. But these are the kinds of questions we have and not many answers, so hopefully we can discuss it a bit in the sessions and get some insight into this.